So this is a public meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
And
very little information on this.
I'll give a good background for you.
And Brian Wheeler, just jumping in real quick to let everyone know, in 1 minute, the recording starts. It'll be live on Facebook.
Good.
Okay. I might turn this camera off.
Hey, how you doing, Cato?
All right, how you doing, man?
Do I need to have my camera on?
It's up to you. Usually the task force members will have their camera on.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Kathy.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
And then I'll also have the task force members introduce their position on the CDBG Ridge Street Task Force. So we have a wide range of positions from residents, business owner, property owner. So they'll state their role on the task force. All right, we'll give it a couple more minutes.
Good to see everybody still's got power. I'm wondering how much longer it's going to last. Or the limbs start falling everywhere. But I have 402.
Like the map behind you.
Thank you, Pat. I try to have a backdrop that makes me look smarter than I actually am.
I just have a window.
Too.
So I may get distracted and look out of it to see what trees are falling.
I do suspect those are going to happen today. Are the
Yeah, I
buses
think so
running?
too.
Is cat running right now?
We are, and I've had to clear several big tree limbs out of the road already.
Mm.
Oh boy.
I think tomorrow morning is really going to be the issue when it freezes overnight.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. Oh, I grew up in the Northwest, so I'm used to snow and ice. I just it drives me nuts how people don't know how to drive around here, but it's okay. Anyways, you see a little ice, you're like, oh, get drive. All right.
Alrighty, so it's 4:03. I'm going to go ahead and take roll call and then do a brief intro of CDBG, and then we'll get started. Roll call, if everyone can do or state their position on the Ridge Street Task Force so that our guests can know who they're talking to today, that'd be great. Chris Meyer.
Good afternoon, everybody. Chris Meyer, the Executive Director of the Local Energy Alliance Program, which has its office at 608 Ridge Street. And I am, I think, the business representative, technically, to the committee. Thank you.
Kathy Johnson-Harris.
Kathy Johnson-Harris, resident.
Katie Holland-Repnick, she is a resident. She'll be joining in later. Kim Spalding, I don't see her online, but that's okay. She's the CDBG Task Force representative. Pat Lloyd.
Resident.
Audrey Oliver. I don't see her, but she's also a resident. And then Tania Dowell.
Good afternoon, Tania Dowell, representation of the Charlottesville Planning Commission.
Awesome. So CDBG, for those of us that don't know or aren't familiar with it, the city of Charlottesville is an entitlement community. So each year we receive about $300,000 to $400,000 of CDBG funding. A portion of that grant is allocated to the Priority Neighborhood Fund, which is this group that we're here for today. And that's in accordance to the city's consolidated plan, which is the CDBG playbook, essentially. For the priority neighborhood, this is council designated. So each year, council will decide which priority neighborhood will get this CDBG funding. There are several priority neighborhoods. There's Belmont, Ridge, 10th and Page, Franklin, not Franklin, but Rose Hill. The goal is to help improve access to neighborhood amenities within these priority neighborhoods. Council for the Ridge Street priority neighborhood has designated Ridge to be the focus for the next 3 years. So FY20 to the end of 2023. And we have an estimated budget of a little over $500,000. This could increase or decrease depending on what HUD gives us the next 2 years. The goal of the task force is to help me prepare a list of priorities so that I can take this forward to council and council can approve a project that we can use the money and spend the money on a particular project. So examples of projects in the past that have been approved in the city include the 10th and Page Park Enhancement Project, the Franklin Street Sidewalk, the Rain Garden and Rives Park, and the 5th Street Sidewalk and Cherry Avenue Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project. So the list that was sent out earlier, and I will go ahead and share that with you guys. Are we all able to see this?
Mhm.
Okay, let me go ahead and make it. Is that better?
Looks good to me.
Okay, good. So these were the set of priorities that were brought forth by the task force members over the last month. And this has been talked about over the last several months, actually. These were the ones that were brought up quite often. I'll let the task force take over the discussion from here, but these were the prominent priorities that have been identified as the higher ranking needs for the neighborhood.
Aaron, this is Pat. I've lost you. My internet went out, so I'm joining by phone.
Okay. We're looking at the priorities table sheet.
Okay, doke. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So is this, are we going item by item, or are we waiting for someone to, I guess, what are we waiting for?
Yeah, sorry, Aaron, this is Chris. Is there a way to get, and maybe staff would know, to give us estimates on how much of the cost? Because again, I think we are constrained by costs, at least this fiscal year, right? And I think a lot of the things we had prioritized, if I remember coming out of our last meeting, were around sidewalks and signage and bus stops, for example. So we could kind of see how much we could try to get for, again, the amount of money we have.
Oh, we can go item by item. Chris, what other task force have done in the past is they do use the full pot of money too, if it is a big project that they do want to consider. Like the park projects will often use 3 years worth of fiscal money, and then anything, any small projects that they want to do later on with funding left over, they will use for the budget for later on. But yeah, we can go line by line. We can start like that.
So sorry,
go ahead.
Okay, not to. Pat and Kathy or Tania, is that okay? Or
Yeah, that's fine.
I think one of your, is your phone on, Pat? You might be echoing.
Yeah, let me turn it off.
right, so addition of some speed limit signs. How much would that cost? And I guess
if it's just, sorry, this is Brennan. Hopefully y'all can hear me. My internet's been in and out today. So speed limit signs are going to be fairly low cost, you know, a couple $100 a piece at most. It's more, we need to establish where we're going to put them and that kind of stuff. So it's, as far as trying to spend the money, like signage is not going to be where you're having an issue spending the money. It's going to be sidewalks, transit stops if they want to do them, or you know, those bigger type of construction projects. I mean, all of the signage for the whole kind of area that we're talking about would probably be less than $2,000.
all right, so we could sign all the signage that are listed on here. We could get for $2,000 if I understood correctly, which sounds like a deal.
Right. From a cost standpoint, there's a few of them that we will have to figure out. We might not put them everywhere that you guys are suggesting, but we can do some added signage there. Just as an example, the children at play signage, we usually reserve that for around playgrounds and that kind of stuff. So staff would probably not recommend putting children at play just on a regular residential street.
Is it possible to increase the route of the buses? That shouldn't cost anything. And my main concern, it may not be on the list because I'm having internet problems also, but at the end of Ridge, the 1000 block Epitha Village, if you all are familiar with that, I have watched and I have also helped many residents who get off at the corner of Brookwood with groceries, and they use the transit system quite a bit. So
Kathy,
we could actually have the bus route extended where it comes down and loops at the end of that road. Am I clear? Hello?
you went on mute there for a second, Kathy.
Right.
Okay, I'll try to come back. Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So is that possible?
So this is Juan Lee with Charles Ferry Transit. I think what you're suggesting is the bus goes beyond Brookwood to the end of the street and turn around somehow?
Yes, and that portion of Ridge is very wide, and we don't have a lot of parking down here on the street. It would go right down to the apartment complex.
Right. The bus is not physically able to turn around there.
Right.
Okay.
So in general, Ridge Street is very narrow for us. I don't know if you've been behind a bus when there's oncoming traffic, but one of us has to pull
I've been
over.
behind it coming up Brookwood Drive, which is narrow. Yeah.
And so that's traditionally been our major issue with that area, is how narrow the streets are with the parked vehicles and two-way traffic.
So maybe, I mean, to that point though, and Kathy, there is, I see what the prioritize was trying to get I think um, a cover or a shelter there and that in front of, at that corner where the existing stop is. What would that, I guess, potentially cost be and look like in order to try to meet some of, I think, what you're trying to get at, Kathy?
So just to be clear, the shelter cost and it is not really, you know, we're talking a few $1,000s per shelter. Install costs, we're talking maybe another few $1,000s. The real issue is ADA compliance. And so when we're talking about a shelter, we have standards to at what point we put a shelter in. You know, obviously we don't put a shelter in every stop. Shelters are expensive, and so we need to put them where there's high demand. So we'll look at ridership data and determine, does this, you know, place warrant a shelter? If not, what other amenities can we put in? You know, benches, pole seats, or trash can, stuff like that. So let's assume this place does warrant a shelter, and we do put a shelter in. Then now we're talking about ADA compliance, and so what that means is the sidewalk has to be wide enough to meet ADA guidelines, but also the shelter has to take up another 4 foot, you know, in addition to the sidewalk to be able to go in. And so the total length, I think, from curb to the back of the shelter turns out to be close to 10 feet. So sorry, that's not right. It's I think
it's
so 7 or 8 feet. So if on that corner we're talking about putting the corner of Brookwood and Ridge, putting in a shelter, then we got to talk about whose property are we putting the shelter in.
Mine.
If it's not right away, then that brings up a whole nother set of problems.
It's my property.
And then if the shelter is there, we got to ensure that sidewalk is ADA compliant, which means curb cuts and ramps, and that's I'm not entirely sure if that already exists or not, but that's going to be.
Yes, it does. I'm the one who lives, that's my property that we're talking about.
Right.
And so it's a pretty wide sidewalk right there, and it's sort of rounded. It's not square.
Right.
And so there has been a bench there before, but they cut it off. Not well. They left part of the post sticking up. I mean, you know, we went out with a sledgehammer to try and drive it down so that it didn't kill anybody while they walked by. So I think the study needs to be done first. Yeah.
Joanne, it sounds like probably I need to go out and take a look at this location just to see if a shelter can even be put in there. Ma'am, I don't know if your property has a slope to it or not. Oh, by the way, I'm Stephen McNeil. I'm Senior Transit Project Manager with CAT. But I don't know if your property is flat or if there's a slope to it, if a retaining wall might be required behind a concrete pad for a shelter.
No.
Okay, well, I need to look at that myself.
Yeah, go for it.
And just see what is required there, and if we can put a shelter there. And to Joanne's point is that on ADA is we just want to make sure that there is an accessible route, that it does meet the standards for a disabled person to be able to use that. You know, that's kind of like step one, considering placement of a shelter. And then the on-off counts at that particular stop would be considered as well.
Well, and Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, or sorry, Kim, I mean, the sidewalk length to get to the housing at the end of the street is wide enough. I would say it's ADA compliant at the moment.
Yeah. It has the little ramps on the sidewalk.
Right. So, you know, and Kathy, I think to your point, you're saying it is heavily used by that population. So there, in theory, it should have the volume. And even if it does have the volume, I think what we're talking about is we're willing to pay the cost out of this grant to put that in. So we're not expecting CAT to pay it, is we're willing to put the money up to do that. Right? If I understand this correctly?
Right.
So,
I mean, how far into the property, I'm not sure this thing has to go, because it is landscaped there, but measurements would be nice to know.
Right. That'll depend on where the right of way begins and ends. And so, is the sidewalk wide enough? If it isn't, then it has to be.
Yeah, it's wide. It's pretty wide there.
And then if the sidewalk's wide enough, then it's another 4 foot of our pad going in 4 foot
There
deep.
we go. There's the picture.
And sorry, Jawan, do you always have to go into the property, or is it possible to push out the curb like you do in other situations
we don't go into the streets. I mean, that's not our purview.
Well, luckily we have Brennan here. Brennan, would be possible to push out the curb there. It's a pretty wide street at that point, if I think I understand correctly. Rather than have to go into the property.
The only problem I can see with pushing the curb out further is that the bus does need to make, the sweep around there.
It's enough room for them to do the sweep if they put it out a bit. One of the things that I would like to see about this bench is that the experts come out and look at it and then come back and talk to us.
Definitely.
Because it's a really important feature, because there are, as I continue to point out, in Epatha Village, we have a lot of elderly people and handicapped people, and I would be sure that Mr. Lee could look at the ridership of the bus at that point, and it tends to be quite a few people. So and a lot of them are retired and elderly. So it would be really good to accommodate them as best we can. So could the experts look at that, Kim, and come back to us, and then we could have a discussion?
Right, definitely. There's also deaf and blind people from that center that come and use that bus too. And then there's people from the other side of Ridge that walk down to be there. It's a busy bus stop.
Yes, that's why I wanted them to turn around at the end of the street. And I still think they can, but I don't know
that they can.
I hope
I wouldn't want to have to try and do that.
I hope that they will look at it when they come out. And so with the sidewalk and looking at the end of Ridge, then could they come back at another meeting or give us information through you?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
So just in the meantime, to maybe put a little bit of a placeholder, and I know we're waiting for experts, it sounds like $4,000 or $5,000 to install a bus stop there, just for the structure and grading potentially, and then let's say another $10,000 for
quite a bit more than that. I think it's the last time I priced shelters was over a year ago, and the ones that are used in Charlottesville are over $7,500. And then you have a cost of a pad, you have a bench inside, and if they have solar lighting on them, which I assume is what would be wanted here as well, that's an added cost too. And so we'd have to look at that installed price.
Yeah, that's getting pretty ridiculous.
And they are 4 foot by 13 foot, ma'am. So, and that's behind the sidewalk. If that's into your property, that's a nice little chunk of property there. So something to be considered.
Yeah, I agree that we should prioritize what we've got on this list, get staff to go back and look at specifics, and then come back to us with prices. I think, Kathy, that's a really great idea. It's almost like we're shooting from the hip here without knowing what specific costs are, but we can't know that until staff goes out and actually looks at things.
And also sees, you know, how much space it's going to take up and what are other options.
Okay. All right. Aaron, I think some of us had done our homework a couple of weeks ago, right? And sent you things, which is this list, right? We got $2,000 for the signage so far. Sounds like we're tens of thousands of dollars for a bus stop at that corner. Should we go through the sidewalks then right now at the moment and I guess try to price those out? Or I guess, sorry, the rest of the committee, are there any things here that we don't want to do, or are we all in agreement that we should at least try to figure out what the costs are associated with everything that's on this list?
Well, it sounds like we can't do what Ms. Harris suggested, which was having the bus run all the way to the end of Old Ridge. So I think we can cross that one out.
Yeah, and that's not like a capital improvement cost that we would be able to pay for, right? I mean, that would be great. Yeah. They should do because there's a need there, but that's not something we would pay for out of this funds. So,
but let's go back. I don't think we should cut it off until somebody sees it. And then if you see it and it doesn't need to be done, then cut it off. So let's kind of keep everything there, but get the experts to look at it.
Yeah, we'll certainly, when we go out, look at everything on the list. I mean, we're not going to go out and just look at one thing and come back. So when we go out, we'll look at everything on the list.
I'm sorry, we can't. Yeah, as much as they can, go out and look at, you know, and we need to say which one we would like them to watch.
Juwan, I just sent you a map of the Ridge Street priority neighborhood. Would it be helpful to talk about Kat's long-term vision for this area? Sorry, I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Hello? Okay. Sorry. No, I was checking the email and everything. So long term, I mean, we do realize Ridge Street has stayed in our service for over the last, you know, however many changes we made, and that's because we do recognize that the residents there are reliant on transit. So I don't think, you know, we don't have plans to pull out if that's what you're concerned about. Our long term plan, I think, involves the improved service actually in that area. By also serving South First Street. So that's something we're looking into and trying to figure out how we can do that and accommodate that. And so in that process, you know, it's not like looking at one thing and we're just going to work on that. It's really looking at that whole area and try to make improvements in that area. Saying that, I know there's been a lot of physical barriers for us on Ridge Street. And a lot of that, as I mentioned before, is the narrow roads and narrow sidewalks. And so, yeah, we would like to include some amenities at stops, but we also have to make sure when we do make improvements that they'll meet the current standards and especially the AGA. So that's our biggest concern. You know, getting a bench or a pole seat in there is not the issue. Is it how do we do it in the best way? And so Steve's on board and he's bringing his expertise in, so you know, we can try to work through this. But we do have things that are beyond us, such as the road width and the sidewalk width. And so if we are talking about making improvements, then that's potentially going into people's properties, and that also becomes an issue that we have to look into. So overall, yes, we do recognize the importance of the area, and we do and are trying to make improvements there. But just know that there are some barriers for us to, you know, we can't just go in and do this tomorrow.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Aaron, what is the timeline that you're looking at on developing this priority list to take to council?
The one meeting a month has not been ideal, but I'm hoping for something by spring to take something to council.
So is that March, April?
Yeah. Probably April, May.
Okay. Well, I would think if we could get cost breakdown from staff and their generous offer to go and look at each one of these things, I think that would be really helpful in terms of us prioritizing, because I would assume we do not have enough money to do every single one of these things, but it might help us prioritize which of these things, if we had a cost breakdown of them. And Ms. Harris, I don't know if you saw the picture that I took of the culvert by your house on Raymond Road.
So there was this one and this one.
Right.
If I can get it onto one screen.
And Aaron, I don't know who put their staff comments and estimates on that. Next to that one, it was $1 million.
Yeah, so Brennan and I were talking about that a little bit. Brennan, do you want to comment on that a little bit about the culvert infill?
Sure. So it's not a matter of just filling in the ditch. The ditch serves a purpose for stormwater.
Yes. Yes.
So we would actually have to more than likely, in order to do that, we would have to put curb and gutter and drainage structures in the whole length of the street to fill in that ditch. So that's where that large number comes from, is because it's not a simple task to just fill it in.
So it really is $1 million?
It would probably be at least that.
My concern is that street and those folks have historically been underrepresented, and I must and overlooked. And I must say, I see that as a real example of the inequities in Charlottesville. So I would really encourage staff that is involved in that kind of activity to push it along if you can.
Did we lose her?
No comments. Next.
Which one you want us to talk about next, Aaron?
Where did we leave off? We kind of jumped around to.
Well, the culvert is where we were.
I think culvert was on the last of the, no?
I don't know.
So.
I'm looking at Woodfolk Drive, and that is really just such a short little street with obviously not a whole lot of traffic on there.
So addition of sidewalk.
Right, but it's a dead end. So it's what, maybe 5 houses at the most in on that street.
It'd be nice if those folks had at least a sidewalk on one side, though.
I just don't see it as a heavily trafficked street. Certainly not like Raymond Road or Brookwood or Ridge, where there's a lot of traffic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why I think it's important to get a breakdown of costs for each of these things, because then we can, I would think, be more able to prioritize based on cost.
Yeah, I think last time they were talking about, I don't know, $200 and some per foot for a sidewalk. Is that right?
Yeah, that's about right. Yep.
Brennan.
So I think maybe Aaron and I can go through before the next meeting and get prices on all the sidewalks or estimates based on that really rough $200 a linear foot. We can figure that out and put costs associated with them. That shouldn't take too long.
Great. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, this is what it boils down to, is money. And so, as Pat had said last time, let's see what we can get the biggest bang, affect the most people for the buck.
And transit can go out, certainly. I mean, in January, we can go out, take a look, and get some rough cost estimates as well. So you can have a complete list of everything with what it's going to cost for each amenity.
Good.
Concrete pad.
Well, that corner right there on Brookwood and Ridge Street is my house. So I'm saying yes, if it doesn't dig in too far, because there is a big pine tree I don't want to have disturbed.
But we'd have to take a look. It's,
sure.
Yeah. Also, right-of-way acquisition isn't, that's, I don't even know who handles that in the city, but we'll have to get with them, engage them, and figure out how that's done and what that process is as well. So, but yeah, we'll try to get more answers or more information to be included in the next month, so you can have a better understanding of what it's going to take and cost.
I appreciate that, and I think everybody else does. Is it some way we can push for police enforcement, well, not the traffic cops to come out and ticket those people who park improperly? Because coming up Brookwood, it says no parking, but their cars parked up on if you're coming from 5th Street Extended on the right-hand side of the townhouses. And also on Raymond Road, there are times when cars are parked on both sides and it's not wide enough. We had the bus coming down here when they first started out, but it wasn't enough room for them to come down. So everybody has at least 3 cars on Raymond Road, and they don't use their garages, but they park improperly. And I think a couple of them are Airbnbs and also student housing.
They are.
Wow.
So help us by enforcing, and we talk about signage, help us enforce the signage, because I would hate for you all to spend money and we're just gonna look at the signs and not follow the rules.
Right.
I agree.
And
Yeah,
also
I always
a
see police.
flashing, also a flashing light at the crosswalk that crosses across Old Ridge to the tennis court. That's where a couple of people have been hit. The last one, a child.
That's a dangerous, dangerous place there.
Excuse me, hey,
It is a dangerous
Aaron.
place, and
Aaron, this is
I have recommended that we just get rid of that crosswalk altogether, but council didn't like that idea. So I am going back to council in January to talk to them about Ridge Street, Fifth Street altogether. So that will be kind of part of that discussion as well.
And please, when you go back, one of the things we have complained about that in the past. I'm a resident that has been here since 1960. One of the things that when we complained, they just put great big X marks, and the police would see people on the X mark, drive around them and keep going. So whatever you put there, if you close it up, have an alternative. If you put something there, it needs to be enforced. And I know that's not you all's area, but I think we are being looked at on television or whatever. And I think that's a priority for safety.
Yeah, what I was trying to say was I don't believe that we're actually going to get rid of that crosswalk and close it off. I think we will look to enhance that crosswalk with rapid flashing beacons or something else to make it safer based on what council had wanted.
Good.
And I don't want you to get rid of it. I never said that.
Okay, so it looks like we're gonna get some estimates for next meeting.
Aaron, could I ask you a question quickly? Are there any restrictions on the use of the CDBG funds for amenities or improvements on private property?
What kind of improvements?
Just what we're talking about.
This would qualify.
Just wanted to check the box.
We're good.
Very good.
Any last minute questions from staff or the task force? Anything that
So sorry everybody for having to leave, but it sounds like staff will come back at the next meeting after investigating all these different again requests and come back with price estimates and other observations. That's the goal, so that we can then make some decisions. Because what I'd hate to have is come back and we're all looking at each other again and going, what are we talking about? And to a certain extent, and not have information and not be able to advance.
And could we have the list before so that we can prepare notes? Yeah. You know, so we can look over it and then the discussion won't go from one thing to the other. We can make decisions.
Yes.
Well, because I think we did our homework and provided the locations and the sidewalk notices and took the pictures and everything, right? I guess is there anything else needed from us? Yeah, and I guess all the clarifying questions, hopefully on all of these they're clarified and there's no more information needed from staff in order to, again, go forth and bring back the information needed.
I personally thought the document was, I mean, you guys, yeah, with the pictures and everything, was crystal clear on what you're asking for. So, okay. Like I said, that, I mean, helps us look at that area and figure out what we need to do. So we'll bring that information back so you know what needs to be done in order to make it happen.
Right. I'm also wondering, I know that before people were kind of talking about, well, that money we could get from the city, you know, for signage and things like that. It would be nice to know if we're footing most of the bill, what the city can kick in to make these things happen.
You know, I think one of the issues is what's happening on Fifth Street extended going into Ridge, crossing Elliott and Cherry, because I know the city is prioritizing working on that. So rather than use our funds to do some stuff there, would the city be doing stuff there? And could we know about what that is?
Well, if I understood Brennan correctly, it sounds like he's got to present in January, which would be before or right after. Would that be before our next meeting, Aaron, or after our next meeting? Would Brendan be presenting to council on this?
I'll schedule our next meeting for the end of January. Also keep in mind, I did send you the city project list last month. Yes. So that you do have an idea of what's going on other funding wise, so that we don't overlap. So be sure to keep checking.
So Aaron, but in the staff comments, you might be able to flag some of those other, I think what Pat and Kathy's observations are, and Kim's.
Right. These are other funding sources, but the city does have other projects going on that are underway. Where did I have that in here?
So we could understand that to be, you know, there's not a guarantee that the other city money would potentially be available, but it would be something we could try to consider. We need potentially be able to consider.
Yes and no. These are all based on priority.
Right. Okay.
So if you want something to happen right now, CDBG is your best bet. The other funding sources way down the road.
But I did hear the traffic man say the last time that they might be able to do some of those things. Put the more speed signs in, and possibly even one of the flashing speed signs.
Correct. Council approves it.
Hey, Erin, this is Amanda Ponce. I don't know if you wanted me to bring up the question or the comment about the sidewalk that I thought was missing from the list in this meeting, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. I know that I had heard from a couple people in the neighborhood about 6th Street Southeast, and that was not on the list. So this would be to fill gaps along 6th Street. I believe it's on the border. And so I just wanted to raise that with the rest of the committee. I think originally maybe it was thought that that was outside of the boundary, but it is actually within the boundary. So I don't know if that one needs to be considered.
6th Street. That's over by Yellow Cab.
Yes, I think the main area that I had heard was kind of between Elliott and like Bowling, Blenheim, that kind of bit. But there are some gaps on the south side of Elliott as well.
Thanks, Amanda. This is Pat. I was going to say that the list as it exists right now is pretty focused on Old Ridge, Raymond Road, Brookwood Drive, and the pictures that I went out and took because they were in my neighborhood certainly does not speak to all of the possibilities in other areas within the Ridge Street neighborhood. We just haven't heard from folks in those other areas.
I guess Aaron can make sure that's added to the list if
does the task force want to add it to the list?
You haven't already. It's a lot of sidewalk.
But we've been talking about sidewalks and all over the neighborhood. Could that be an issue where we contract out and possibly use people who have small businesses to help in that? Or could we have some kind of training program with the city to teach how to lay a sidewalk? Because we have spent a lot of money for these trails that go around the city and the bicycle lanes. But every time I have ever been on a committee, it's been, oh, I don't think we can afford that. I can't do this. And I think that if we are a committee and we don't want to use all our money on sidewalks either, but I think, as Pat pointed out, we have been neglected, but you put bicycle lanes in that street. We have been neglected, and you still come back and put things on the street that cost, and you want walkability. And this community now, I see more people walking in it than my dad was a famous walker, but I see more walkers and children now than I've ever seen. And I think we should make it as safe for them as possible. So is it some way that we can find some other source other than the city of Charlottesville to eat up the money to build sidewalks?
I'm with you, Kathy. The more people that know how to do things, the better.
Well, it's like killing two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
I think that's excellent.
I wonder if there's a way that K-Tech might get involved with this, since they do training.
Amanda, since you oversee probably a lot of the sidewalk installation, you know about the contracting and use of local labor or local firms and how that works?
It usually has to be bid out to go through it.
Sure.
But there's also priorities for small, medium enterprises, minority owned, women owned type of.
Yeah, I believe that with CDBG that there's a certain percentage of the work that has to be minority owned. And so most contractors that do this work have a subcontractor or something that does a percentage of the work for them that is a minority. I don't know, maybe Aaron can check if we've done it in the past where we can put a stipulation in as far as local businesses as well. I don't know that we've done that, but we can check on that.
That would be great. Thank you.
Brennan, you got it right. Whenever we put a contract out to bid, there is a priority statement in there that says any minority business owner eligible, they do have priority as to bidding on this contract. All IFBs do get put on the HUD database and the Section 3 database. Past contracts have never been bid on for minority business enterprises, but that could change for this one.
All right, so Aaron, and not trying to end the conversation here from anybody else on the committee, but is there homework for our committee then? It just sounds like there's more unfortunate homework on the side of city staff, if I understand correctly, or do we need to do more homework?
It will be for staff to get estimates for next time.
We're off the hook. Yay.
All right. And I guess we can be available for if staff have further questions or when they come and do their tour, if they need someone to help explain things, potentially a committee member can be made available to assist. I'm sure Kim, you might be available when Kat comes by to, again.
Well, I'm in Mexico, actually.
Well, you're not going to fly back?
I might if I think my whole place is going to be torn up. Yes, I might come back, but I'll have to camp at somebody else's house.
I can be available if I know at least 24 hours before.
As can I.
So I guess, Aaron, if you do, and again, staff know, and with some time beforehand, it sounds like some committee members could make a time available to also assist in walking the neighborhood and seeing some of these specific examples to make sure city staff understand, I think, what the vision is, or at least the priority is.
And make sure that it's not a large group because of the pandemic.
Right.
And wear your mask. And the next meeting, is it going to be the week of the 17th? Because that's going to be a busy week.
No, I would make it the week of the 25th.
Okay. That works. Thank you.
We'll have a new president.
I do want to open it up to public comment real quick. So if there's any member of the public who would like to speak, just raise your hand and I will call on you. Brandon Collins, you're on with the task force. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Hi, Task Force. This is Brandon Collins. I am a staff member for FAR, the Public Housing Association of Residents. FAR is the federally recognized Resident Advisory Board and Resident Council for Public Housing Residents in Charlottesville. As you know, South First Street is undergoing a major redevelopment. And one of the most consistent pieces of information that we've heard from residents since before the idea was even born was that adequate transit service needs to be provided for the neighborhood. Over the next couple of years, you're going to go from 58 homes to something like 170 homes. Many of those folks are going to be transit dependent. The bus used to run down South First Street and does no longer. Super enthusiastic to hear that Kat is thinking about this. I know there's some coordination with Housing Authority, but I'm surprised to see that CDBG funds haven't been discussed for any improvements on South First Street for expanded transit. Similarly, so I encourage you to take a look at that and see, maybe it's for next year's allocation. I don't know, but it definitely should be on your list. And then similarly, the what I call the backside of Crescent Halls is a really interesting place for residents of Crescent Halls, and Crescent Halls is also undergoing a redevelopment. Really good improvements to the parking lot infrastructure there, but it's not really a throughway, but people use it as a cut through.
Yep.
And I think that would be worth communicating with Housing Authority, with our organization, and with the city staff to see if there are improvements leading into that area. And on the official entrance there where the Ix is and the brewery, if there are significant improvements that can be made. I know some of this sort of allocated through SIA stuff, but I think it's worth having the task force take a look at that, and hope you all carry on.
Thanks, Brandon.
All right, looks like that was our only public speaker today. Oh, the minutes from last meeting. Any changes or additions to them from the task force?
Aaron, thank you for doing such a great job. You're keeping us so organized. It's wonderful.
You're welcome.
So moved.
So I'm hearing no changes, so I'm gonna keep them as is. Any last minute comments before we adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Okay. That works.
I second.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Stay warm. Stay safe tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, staff members.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good evening.